There it is. So welcome. It's morning where I am. I know everyone here is not on this side of the globe, but I'm wishing you a good morning anyway. My name is Sunny Dowman. I'm the host in this session, and I'm here to introduce our lovely speaker, Alkistis Dimech. Did I say that right? Oh, good.
Yes.
Yes. Alkistis is a dancer, choreographer, writer, and the co-founder with Peter Gray of Scarlet Imprint, an independent press at the forefront of contemporary esotericism and occultism. She has practiced and kokubuto. I think I slaughtered that one. It's in English, it is the dark dance or the dance of darkness. And she has been practicing this since 2002, developing a philosophy and praxis of the body that encompasses and explores its occulted, magico-mystical, mythic, and sexual dimensions. Her performances, writings, and presentations can be found online at alkistisdimech.com and in The Brazen Vessel, which was published by Scarlet Imprint in 2019. And so please join me in welcoming and enjoying this talk. Alkistis, over to you.
Thank you, Sunny. That was perfect. Hello, everybody. I'm very excited to be here, and I think I'll just get on with this, and there'll be plenty of time for questions at the end. Transgressing Angels, Entangled Bodies. Part 1, Transgressing Angels. From the descent of the rebel angels in the Enochic traditions to Dee and Kelley's angelic conversations, to William Blake's erotic visions and the angelic speculations of Luce, Irigaray, and Michel says, angels unite the empyrean realm with the terrestrial, the material with the imaginal, the infinite and inconceivable to the indefinite shifting realm of creation, from its conception to its end. The angel is sexual, elemental, moving through light and flesh, mediating, communicating, transforming, transgressing the boundary of I and other, body and world, inhering one in the other and the one in all. Watchful, unsleeping, ever active, the angels are the energia, the energies, powers, actions, or effects of the astral bodies, always at work in our lives, implicated in the darkest foldings of our flesh, consummating an inner desire, intentions, intensities, by which we come to know, and through which we are known. Irigaray locates the angel in the mediating space of the placenta between mother and fetus, our first environment, where I am a bloody clot, palpitating, awakening to a dream, an as yet unlanguaged, unthought life, where angels are already at play with us. The angel is here in beginnings. Dionysius the Areopagite tells how their firstness of origin endows the angels with the powers to originate. One of the angelic controversies concerns this firstness of origin, of creation, and of the origin of evil in the world, the birth of the demons from the disincarnate spirits of the giants, and the grimoires which are filled with the spirit lists and the materia magica that the fallen angels first unleashed upon us. Here I will give you a preliminary outline of an archaeology of rebel angels so that we can turn to the future and the stars. So let's go back to Enoch's vision. 1 Enoch 18-19. The angel said, "This place is the end of heaven and earth. This has become a prison for the stars and the host of heaven. And the stars which roll over the fire are they which have transgressed the commandment of the Lord, in the beginning of their rising, because they did not come forth at their appointed times. And he was wroth with them and bound them till the time when their guilt should be consummated, even for 10,000 years. And Uriel said to me, here shall stand the angels who have connected themselves with women, and their spirits, assuming many different forms, are defiling mankind and shall lead them astray into sacrificing to demons as gods. Here shall they stand till the day of the great judgment, in which they shall be judged till they are made an end of. And the women also of the angels who went astray shall become sirens. The Book of Enoch was one of the sources for the apocalypse or revelation of John of Patmos, John the Divine. I suggest we can only understand the description of the harlot in Revelation 17 in relation to the Enochic fallen angel traditions in the Book of Enoch, particularly the line, and upon her forehead was a name written, Mystery, Babylon the Great, the mother of harlots and abominations of the earth. And the mother of harlots and abominations of the earth prefigures the daughter of fortitude from D. Kelley's Angelic Workings, and also Aleister Crowley's Babylon. So I see this figure as the source figure, but it's important that you find the origin of this also connects back to the fallen angel tradition and the women. And according to David Owen, the word mitir, mother, is used in this sense in Revelation as a figurative extension that means something like archetype, that is something anticipating a later reality and suggesting a derivative relationship, or that indicates the source or origin of some activity or quality. And it's also possible that the mother of harlots is used in the superlative sense of meaning the most depraved harlot or whore. So I propose that an overlooked and yet critical source for the demonized feminine divine of John's harlot are the women who mated with the rebel angels, whether we see them as stars or planets or daimones, and implicated this alien and other DNA here on earth, who transgressed and birthed the Nephilim or the giants, which is another reading also of the earthly abominations. And I think that through this myth of the fallen angels and of the women who transgressed with them, we can begin to excavate a myth and bring to light more material for working with the figure that now we recognize as Babylon and the goddess of our current apocalypse. There's a sexual and erotic mystery here, and it hinges on, first of all, the angelic gaze. Let's go back to 1 Enoch and previously, verse 6, chapter 6. When the sons of men had multiplied in those days, beautiful and comely daughters were born to them, and the watchers, the sons of heaven, saw them and desired them, and they said to one another, let us choose for ourselves wives from the daughters of men, and let us beget children for ourselves. And Shemyaza, their chief, said to them, I fear that you will not want to do this deed, and I alone shall be guilty of a great sin. The rebel angels descended from their celestial dwelling to swear their oath on Mount Hermon. So you see the mountain as this liminal space between heaven and the world of mankind below, at the base of the mountain. It's the most inaccessible region for us to get to. And Hermon actually means oath, and it's a particular oath that is sworn there. It's a death pact, an allegiance to death. Led by Shemyaza, 200 angels took for themselves wives, and they began to go into them and to defile themselves through them, and to teach them sorcery and charms, and to reveal to them the cutting of roots and plants. here's the origin story for witchcraft and sorcery. And it's also at this stage in the myth, you could take it very far back to a Paleolithic knowledge. It's the knowledge of plants and stones and roots. So I found that interesting. It's the first sort of organic way of working with the materia magica, which also finds itself into the later grimoires, along with metallurgy and the other things that get added later when the angels teach all humans. The angels transgress the divine law to enter into the living currency of bodies. They also want to create their own children. So they're again implicated in creation and at the origin of things. This is an exchange of carnal pleasure for divine knowledge, an entanglement that we encounter again later with the figure of the siren. The secrets of sin. So the angels teach women the secrets of sin. Angels are strangely bound to and aroused by the erotic. It's the beauty of the women, their carnal voices. Maybe as they're working together, they are singing, so they are weaving or they are in the fields, and the angels see them and I think hear them, although that's not said, but I can imagine that this is what attracts or seduces the attention of the angels, whether they're astral daimones or intensities, currents, breaths, these forces that the universe is alive with to the women, and desiring embodiment, desiring to enter the world of matter. So we see, like Mount Hermon, the erotic itself is another threshold where we encounter the angel. It's the erotic is a limit experience. We don't even have to think of angels in terms of the place, but simply as like experiences. We encounter them always at the edges of our comprehension or our language, or our most intense experiences is a very thick with angels space. Considered of great antiquity, one Enoch exerted an influence on the Egyptian alchemists of the 2nd and 3rd centuries of this era. One text in particular, Isis the prophetess to her son Horus from the 1st century. It's found in the Codex Marcianus, which is an 11th century collection of Greek fragments, ancient Greek, is suggestive of an angelic sex magical operation and is inspired by the transmission of the secrets by angels to the daughters of men recounted in 1 Enoch. So we have our first reappearance of this myth brought into explaining the etiology of making gold and silver. It goes like this. Isis, the prophetess, desiring knowledge of the holy art of Egypt, that is alchemy, and specifically gold making and silver making, went to Homanuthis, which I think is Homopolis, where she secluded herself for a period of time. She writes, according to the recession of the convenient time and to the necessary course of the spherical movement, one of the angels living in the first firmament, after looking at me from above, came wishing to unite with me sexually. When he arrived and started taking this direction, I did not give myself because I wanted to learn the preparation of gold and silver. And the angel tells her that on the following day, because she resists him, she would be visited by a superior angel who was able to reveal what she sought. At noon the next day, Amnael appears, greater than the first angel and possessed by the same desire for me. He descended towards me. He did not stay still, but hastened to the place where I stood, and I did not cease asking him about the matter. And as he held back from answering me, I did not submit to him, but restrained his desire until he made me see the sign that he had on his head, and had transmitted to me without reserve and with sincerity the mysteries that I sought. Finally, he showed me the sign and began the revelation of the mysteries, uttering oaths expressed thus, and these are meant to be sworn by Isis. And I like this oath It's a little like the Orphic oath. I swear to you by the heaven, the earth, the light and the darkness. I swear to you by fire, water, air, and earth. I swear to you by heaven's height, by the depth of the earth and of Tartarus. I swear to you by Hermes, by Anubis, by the howls of Kerberos, by the serpent which guards the temple. I swear to you by the boat and the oarsmen of Acheron. I swear to you by the three fates, the whips, and by the sword. And the whips are the Furies. That's quite a useful little oath. Isis the prophetess to her son Horus is one of the earliest extant texts on alchemy and the first to explicitly attribute the teaching of alchemy to the angels. Whereas the women of one Enoch are desired on account of their beauty and nothing else is said about them. In the account of Isis, knowledge of the elixir comes sacrificially. In other words, she seduces him, the angel, him, it's not really a him, it's an angel, and exchanges knowledge for carnal knowledge that he desires. The process can be likened to a ritual initiatic formula. The encounter with Amnael takes place at a specific time, a specific season, at a particular place, and also a specific hour, noon. So you have the appearance of astrological timing and specificities of place in this, which isn't really there with the daughters of men in one Enoch. You begin to get a sense of the action of the woman, the desiring action of the woman to achieve knowledge. And it's not simply her passive being seen from above, but knowing that she is seen from above, she entices the angel to her, and she doesn't submit to just any angel, but the angel that is able to supply her with the information and the revelation that she's seeking. And she doesn't submit to him until that's fully disclosed without reserve. So you see a very, she commands the angel essentially, but there's still an exchange. There's an exchange made, and this is always predicated on the exchange of bodily, carnal, material knowledge for some obscure science or arcane art that at that time would have been almost impossible to. This is not the internet age and the information age. This is an age when manuscripts are hidden in libraries, and knowledge is something very much in your hands, something that you do. It's not an abstract thing that we think when we say knowledge now. It's very much, knowledge is, and really real knowledge is very much something that has hands and doing and body. It's corporeal. That's what I'm trying to say. Next. Following the letter of Isis, the theme of angelic transmission is taken up by Zosimus of Panopolis, whose dates are about 250 to 300 of the Common Era, who describes chemia as an art taught by fallen angels in a passage which is actually omitted from the Byzantine manuscripts and survives only in the Syriac translation. A full account is preserved in the Syriac Cambridge manuscript MM 629, and in a quotation by Syncellus. I don't know if that's the right pronunciation, that's kind of Greek, who writes, "There is a race of demons who have intercourse with women. Hermes also mentioned this in his Physica, as well as nearly every well-known or secret discourse. Thus, the ancient and divine scriptures said that certain angels desired women, and having descended, taught them all the works of nature." So that's quite comprehensive and staggering. And even though Zosimus is not very keen on the idea that this is the origin of, or rather Syncellus isn't keen on it, Zosimus is a bit more ambiguous. It's become established as the origin myth for these sciences and connected with metallurgy and the making of gold and alchemy and the beginnings of of chemistry and science and physics, which is fascinating. And let me think what I wanted to say. Well, I think it ties again to the original myth and also to Revelation, in that this exchange could be likened to harlotry, in that there's a kind of a giving up of one's body in order for information, sex for knowledge. I think there's many interesting ideas that can be disentangled from, particularly the Isis the prophetess passage. I'm very interested in the description of the preparation of like the medicine or the tincture, as the word used in the Greek is kataskevi, which also implies the sense of a ritual initiation. So what is undergone by the medicine, the plant, or the metal, or the mineral is also what is undergone by the body of the initiant. And one is transformed through this process. So these early ideas of transformation, the transformation of bodies, whether that's our body or the body of the materia that we are working with, the bodies of the angels as they have descended into the earth and into the sublunary realm, is intrinsically tied and folded into this process of initiation and continual awakenings and deepenings into more arcane or profound strata of knowledge. And then it disappears. The connection with the angels and alchemy is stops being written about, and this is obviously a natural magic Christian thing. There is controversies about medicines or tinctures that one makes according to astrological timing, and this is unnatural. If something is a timed tincture, it is considered to have the interference of bad daimones, or just ambiguous and ambivalent daimones, and is not natural. So this is sort of cast aside for a long period of time and doesn't really re-emerge into the story until the 17th century. There's some rather beautiful pictures by William Blake, who one of the last things he did was illustrating the Book of Enoch. I will share these, but I don't know how to now. So maybe in the comments, when we discuss, or any there are questions later, I can bring them up and share them with everybody. But rather than get drawn into that, I wanted to, and William Blake does actually, is fascinated by the erotic and the sexual gnosis of bodies and of our interaction with these intelligences or daimones or angels. And it's this that I find fascinating, because I've had these experiences initially completely unexpectedly out of the blue, and then thereafter sought, much in the way Isis worked. So I went back to my diaries. This is from the year that I met Peter, but I couldn't be with him. So we were in a kind of heightened state of erotic fascination with each other while being absolutely separated. And I wrote this, it was 20th of September 2006, Wednesday night, between 10:30 and midnight. Whilst reading Stranger in a Strange Land, which afterwards I had totally forgotten, I thought was quite amusing, the sensation of being touched, sensually, sexually, of hands on me, his hands. I recognize his touch. I sense him close, but impossible. He's probably sleeping now. He's recovering from flu. I try to read, but I have to put the book down, aroused, unable to concentrate. Now my body is moving, responding to invisible caresses. He penetrates me. I feel him inside me, over me, around me, my whole body aflame with his breath, his eyes, his desire. Twice I climax. Surges of energy overwhelm me, waves crashing through my nerves. The gates, the locks, opened twice. The second time, a flame flares suddenly deep, deep within my sex, incandescence, giving way slowly to a throbbing, burning, glowing throughout my flesh, receding to an infinity beyond me. So I had this experience of being taken by an angel rather unexpectedly one night. And I didn't even know how to think of it at the time. It's only in retrospect that I've understood it in this sense that angels are drawn and aroused by desire. So if you are emitting a very strong hormonal or just eros, that this draws angels to you. They are noticed, you light up in their world. And they're rather keen on sex, which is something you notice with quite a lot of spirits. It's happened to me with tree spirits, particularly like some nature spirits are very interested in conjoining with you. And I've had it happen in dreams where spirits have shown up in dreams with the same intention of experiencing what it is to be flesh in this most heightened state. And this is kind of one of the techniques of my magic, because what happens when you have these entanglements, these encounters, is you're bodily changed by it. The preparation, the katiskevi, the initiation is happening, and you are being transformed by this exchange between another, an unknown, something which is entirely alien to, but not entirely, to us. It's as if it awakens something archaic inside as well, which also comes to join with the angels. So in maybe terms that are familiar to people, the Shakti, Kundalini, is aroused through this exchange and engages with it. And there's a sort of fusion between one's own Shakti and the angel in one's body, which transforms the body at a subtle level, but I believe also in a kind of quantum level as well. Part 2, entangled bodies. Halfway through. My artistic and magical practice is necessarily situated within a world and a body in crisis. The character of our time is one of ecological and corporeal upheaval. These are the conditions that we are born into. It's an inheritance that shapes our lives, the place where we are, the body we are. My work is also intensely personal. When I was writing the abstract, I didn't know whether to say body in crisis or bodies in crisis, and I settled on bodies. But my work is also deeply rooted in my own, let's say, physiology abnormal or whatever it is I am. And so it's come out of what could be called a kind of sickness or a very specific physiological condition. So these conditions of my own life, which are also ancestral, these things are passed down, but even in the material of my life itself has been quite a succession of psychosomatic crises. I've learned how to work and live with this and to incorporate it into what I do and to use it in such a way that it brings forth new life. So I do think that the interaction with these astral forces, which I work with very much in the sublunary world through the materia, very much through the material of the body, but also through the material of plants, stones, and so on, is, what I'm trying to say is that I'm not so much of an astrologer that I am working with particular astral configurations, but I've accepted that where I am, these are the conditions, the space weather, let's say, to use I think a Gordon White phrase, that I can't avoid. Therefore, I must adapt and work with that and use those energies to transform myself into whatever I need to become. And that's an open-ended thing at the moment. The body as spirit. The body as spirit, Seishin Toshite no Shintai, is a book from 1974 by the Japanese phenomenologist Ichikawa Hiroshi, who died in 2002. So he's very recent. In response to European thinkers such as Maurice Merleau-Ponty, he elaborated a concept of the body as a unified multiplicity expressed through the Japanese word mi. Such an understanding of the body has its roots in traditional Japanese thinking, whether that's animism or this non-duality of the Buddhism, but is notable for developing a phenomenological description of the body and the body space. His observation, since our bodies are so close to us, it is difficult to grasp what the body actually is, expresses the same but inverse paradox as Hijikata Tatsumi, who was the founder of Buto, his enigmatic statement that the body is the most remote thing in the universe. And what I love about these expressions is that it shows how implicated we are with the furthest reaches of the cosmos, even though we're very much fixed to this particular little ball in space. In Ishikawa's systematic analysis of the body, he describes one of its phenomenal aspects as sakusotai, the entangled body, which is a body that is dynamically and mutably interwoven with space. That is like the space around us. Sakusotai translates the poet Paul Valéry's notion of the implex, a neologism springing from the Latin implexus, which means interwoven or entwined, involved, intricate, implicated. It's a concept that immediately seized my imagination when I read it. We are not yet finished. Until our last breath, we contain this radical openness, a potential, which is radical because it is rooted in the deepest strata of our evolutionary heritage, and it takes form through and directs our actions. Valéry defines the implex as a power of transformation, introducing it when he first starts playing with the idea as that by which and in virtue of which we remain contingent, conditional. And this is in a book called Idée Fixe from 1965. And he observes that man, and obviously woman, is somehow made for more eventualities than he can know. This really intrigues me because part of my artistic practice is to leave a significantly open space. So perhaps, for example, in performance, or even in this talk, you know, I have like left a lot of open spaces in this talk as well to see what happens. But particularly in performance, I like to work with a structure and allow a lot of space for the other to incur, to come in, to dance with me. So the idea of the implex is having this potential to become what we don't expect is fascinating. And I also find it a good way to challenge these fatalistic conceptions, both of astrology or fate, or this is a very negative thing where people feel that there is no possibility. I need, perhaps because of how I've had to live with the bipolar disorder, I hate this term, but anyway, manic depression, is necessity to be able to always bring something that you cannot even yet imagine out of yourself, and it has to come from your deepest heritage. But this can be capitulated all the way back to, you know, the first cell that emerged out of the soup, if you want to take it that far. And this is kind of what I talk about in my essay on the occulted body. So I recommend, like, these ideas all interlock. Fundamental to the concept of the implex is the recognition of reciprocal influences between an organism and its milieu, and notably that the organism can stabilize and orient itself to increase its possibilities. This is what we do as people. We build houses to make us more comfortable, to give ourselves more opportunities to do things. We're not just like fending off the environments and wolves all the time. So this, in the most simple way, we act like this, and that's connected with that sense of the senses of the implex. We are an organic body consciousness or body mind, interwreathed and in continual dialogue with its environment. The implex as a power of transformation is inherent in us as a latency, a reservoir, not only in our organism, but also in our language, in art. You can apply this idea in many fields, and it's fruitful, but it's that anything that functions in an organic way also contains this capacity. So language renews itself and is a living thing, and culture, art are living things, cultures. Living systems are open systems, that is, they are systems which exchange mass and energy with the surroundings or environment. And that applies whether it is a single cell or an ecosystem or a galaxy. I want to overturn what we understand by body and by environment. For instance, when we think of the environment, we immediately think of our immediate surroundings, but there is the interior landscape, which is one of the concepts I've taken from Buto. It's essentially the imaginal. And you materialize that through your body. So you manage to, in a performance, you will work to manifest the imaginal landscape that you contain within yourself in such a way that you bring everybody involved in this act into the landscape, to the experience. But there is also the epigenetic environment. So there are multiple environments that belong to us as a body or a body mind. The epigenetic environment is a very interesting idea, which also appeals to me because it is when you are about to become a creature, when the sperm and the egg meet, there is a radical plasticity that manifests in your genome, and this is to do with the epigenetic environment. What parts of you are chosen when the chiasmic, when the act of meiosis occurs, is it reconfigures our environment at this cellular level. And so this cellular environment and the epigenetic environment is something which is also in continual exchange with the events of our life. So we are able to affect our genes through the way we live. And therefore, it's one of the environments that we exist in that shape us. I want to overturn these ideas of body because I think still when we say body, and body is such a site of conflict, especially now, we all have such, probably because of the internet, we are exposed to the most caustic environment for our sense of self, and we reduce the body down to the surface of the skin. And I am actually fascinated by the surface of the skin as one of ourselves, but I also know that we have to expand beyond this, both deeper inside as well as further outside into the body space. And for example, the Ishikawa talks about one of the body types is the indefinite body, which is something which is always changing because it is affected by tools. We use tools and the tools become part of our body while we're using them. And again, that takes us back to the idea of embodied knowledge, and that once we have incorporated the knowledge of a tool into the way we do things, into our praxis, that becomes part of us. And I think all magicians with ritual tools will know how much ritual tools become an extension of yourself, and especially when projecting into the spirit world, but even in the most mundane sense of there's something we handle every day. The granularity with which we perceive the body is another aspect that I wanted to look at. So Ichikawa, when he talks of the body, he comes to the understanding that the body is me, that's M-I, and it encompasses the following meanings. So whereas body in English means, in the dictionary definition, is like just the material of the body, the flesh, whether that's a living or a dead body. In Japanese, mi means like the fruit of a living plant. It can mean dead flesh. It can mean living flesh. It can be the whole body of a person. It can be the way of the body. It can be the garments on the body or the belongings of a person. It can be life. It's also connected with the idea of the existence of a social life and others. It means self. It means multiple individual selves, as in myself, yourself, ourselves. It's a socialized self. It's also one's social status or position. It also means, and this is where it gets very interesting, heart and the whole of existence. So the body is at once the most solid, the most elusive, illusory, concrete, metaphorical, and even present and ever distant thing. It is a site, an instrument, an environment, a singularity, and a multiplicity. So we can rethink the way we understand bodies in such a way that we work with intelligences, daimones, astral forces, the elements, in a way that we can bring them into our body in this sense and transform ourselves just as we transform our environments. Ichikawa's phenomenological investigation led him to challenge views that limit the body only to what is enclosed by the skin. And he goes on in his later work to begin to develop the concept of the meta body. He explains that body has the potential to expand both vertically and horizontally beyond the limitations of the skin. And I think that this has a lot in common with the cosmic ideas of the tantric body, and also tantric practices that go with the formation of the tantric body. That's way beyond the scope of this presentation, but he's arriving at this cosmic understanding of the body, which you find in the tantras, in Vajrayana Buddhism, in Tibet, and so on. Since meta-bodiness is beyond the limits of our consciousness, its attainment requires an expansion of consciousness through body practices. He doesn't think, for example, that psychoanalysis is satisfactory because it remains in a discursive sense. And this is very much the work of the body is in the realm beyond language. It's in the realm of gesture, of kinetics, of movement, the unthought, the unlanguaged, the direct experience, which again sounds like what the angels are interested in with us. Knowing sirens, doctae sirenae. In Homer, the sirens say, "For we know all things," and sirens have always been associated with knowledge. Okay, just checking I'm on the right page, yes. The myth of the rebel angels gives us a genealogy for the giants, for Nephilim, for the watchers, for the heroes, and for the sublunary and chthonic demons that haunt the earth that we work with. My focus here now is going to be on the women and their fate to become sirens. Sirens first appear in the Bible.
I'm so sorry to interrupt. You have about 15 minutes remaining. So.
I've got notes. Okay. I thought I didn't have enough. Okay, thank you.
Well, yes.
I will, wait a moment, I don't have a drink. Sirens first appear in the Bible, in the Septuagint, which is the Greek translation. in Isaiah 13:21, where it is said of the fallen city of Babylon, now beasts make their home there, and an empty echo is heard in the houses. Sirens have their habitation there, and demons dance. And in Isaiah 34:11-14, relating the Lord's destruction of Edom, and the hamlet shall be full of sirens, and the house full of sparrows, which sounds rather nice to me, but I think was meant to be a bad thing. Now, the sirens get cut out of the Latin, the Vulgate. Jerome translates it, and he avoids all of the Greek mistranslations of the original Hebrew, except for one instance, which is rather beautiful. Et sirena in de lubris voluptatis, and sirens in the temples of pleasure, which also sounds like a really good thing. These supernatural bird women have migrated from a remote and unwritten prehistory, and you will see like figures of bird women in the cave art through so many forms of the bird woman that I looked at in a short piece I wrote called Volant, which you can find online as well. Looking at the various forms taken by the bird woman, and this is cross-cultural as well, and it may in this case go back to the bird in the Egyptian, but it's very, very, very ancient. They fly from this prehistory into Hesiod and Homer, and in Homer they have this beautiful meadow starred with flowers, which I thought, just because we're in an astrological conference, that the image of a meadow starred with flowers was beautiful, and I wanted to leave that there. And from there into the Bible, an intermingling of Greek mythology and folklore with the Jewish and the Christian, so that this DNA of the archaic tradition of bird women is still continuing. The Physiologus carries the sirens into the medieval bestiaries. In Philippe de Taon's Bestiaire from 1121, the siren sings during storms and cries in good weather because she's a perverse woman bird who delights in all the wrong things. She's compared to heterae and harlots. But since the earliest times, as I started to describe, they are also thought of as knowing, as divine beings in one sense, filled with otherworldly knowledge. And at the same time, they symbolize evil. They are hybrid, they're unstable, they're volatile. The siren facilitates between being a woman and a bird, or a woman and a fish in later tellings of it. They're associated with lust as luxuria or voluptas. They become a metaphor for whores and courtesans, indeed all women except perhaps pious nuns. And at the same time, a warning of the coming destruction. So again, in the medieval period, you have that the siren starts to symbolize an apocalyptic consciousness that people are encountering, a sort of millenarianism, and it's always tied up with this figure of the harlot. The siren was equated with the serpent, also connected to knowledge, but temptation and seduction, carnal knowledge, and ultimately destruction. What you have with the siren then is, and let's go back to David Owen on Revelation, an archetype, the archetype of the bird woman. And because much of my, the main focus of my work is the body, the archetype is a corporeal archetype. All archetypes are ultimately found in bodies, in a corporeal existence, and are both bodied and animate. They gesture, they move, they're kinetic, they're forces that are never still, like the angels. Bodies and angels, matter and light, these are the things that are both particles and waves. These are not, light and matter is so mutually integrated that we are riven through with light. We are just this fine dust that Pavel Florensky talks about as the red Sophia. And so by working with these corporeal forms, and a lot of my work, I've developed forms connected to this bird woman, which is a hybrid, this mixing of human and animal and bird and the different realms, are ways of accessing that potency, that implex in the body, by going deep into our genetic history and bringing out of our living bodies now forms which access these archetypes and can be directed into any of the things. So many of the figures I work with, or I'm interested in from a theoretical or poetic or mythic viewpoint. Anat is a vulture, Ishtar is a hawk, even Babylon is equated with the gluten of the eagle, so has an eagle form and a sex magical formula. And these all relate to the figure of the bird woman. So I'm going to skip the next bit, which is part of that about becoming siren and part of the sort of practical work. Just wanted to say that the siren is also for me a very personal form, because my mother is from Naples, and Naples is actually a siren. Naples is also known by the term Parthenope, who died in most accounts from a broken heart and became the city that is now Naples, and often connected with Vesuvius, obviously, as this. So again, although the siren exists because she's an imaginal creature, like the unicorn. These imaginal animals fascinate me too, but she's also able to become material. The siren became a city, became all the bodies in the city, and even the city itself is a singing city. If you walk around Naples, you will hear people singing still. And these are like the voices of the sirens or the voices of the women at the beginning. There is a continuity that goes all the way back, and you really, really, really feel it. And so when you are in the city of Naples, you feel that you are in the body of this siren. It's a very, very living presence that holds the whole, at a magical level, the whole life of the city together. So what that showed me was how one develops a praxis in which one works in the land where one is. So now that I'm in Cornwall and I've been here for 3.5 years or so, this is also siren land. It's the land of mermaids. And it's an elemental land, and it's a land of light, and it's a land of giants and a land of rock, stones, granite. There are two particular places that Peter and I focus our ritual work on. And one is a part of West Cornwall, which is known by the word Balerion. And the other is right where we're sitting on top of, which is called the Lizard and is made out of serpentine. And it's very particular geologies in both places, which create, for example, one of my practices, most mundane, but most essential, is just walking. And if you walk on this land, it fills your body with particular energies, with a very particular quality. And this again is part of the alchemy of working with the angels, because the angels are in these things. The angels are in the stone, in the earth, in the plants. The stars are raining down their incantations on you all the time. You are under the sky, you are in the elements, you are made of elements. The elements are in you. Your breath mingles with all the breaths. You are taken by it. It takes you, it ravages you. You have to hide from it. It's so intense. It's wonderful. So this sense that the siren is also part of the spirit of the land enabled me to begin to develop with Peter our practice with daimones and angels that is grounded specifically in the land where we stand. And I have, so the becoming siren, the praxis that I've developed are very much can be understood in relation to Peter's work in Lucifer Princeps and the forthcoming praxis and apocalyptic witchcraft and so on. It's part of this incorporating the myth of the fallen angels as it is renewed again and again through its retellings and through being entangled with a living environment and living bodies into a complex of ideas and new mythic new myths being born through this, new stories being told, art. That's what I'm going to say on that, because I wanted to I wanted to get to my final piece, and I've got like 2 minutes to just drop this. Let's go. The body beyond the body. In the figure of the siren, death and future are entwined in iconography, in myth, and in scripture. I see her as the potential to fly, to dance, to exist at the periphery of life, at these edges of a culture in entropy, at the cosmic limit that we are facing now, and we feel in our viscera, and that we can trace in the movements of the stars. How far can life be extended? How far until we can no longer recognize ourselves as human? Can the life-giving Red Sophia be transmitted by a machine? So my weird health situation has also given me a very strong sense of mortality, and I'm very concerned with what it is we're doing here. Like, obviously, I'm working and having very interesting experiences with Babylon, with angels, and like the sex is fantastic, but there's more to it than just fantastic sex. We transform our bodies through these. We are not just, I chose not to have children and to focus all of my work into, well, I couldn't have children, but I wouldn't want to. I'm creating a body, the siren body, through these practices. And this siren body is a way of meeting death or going beyond death. And I know that humans can become angels, and there's a long, like Enoch himself is angelicized and eventually becomes Metatron. So there is a scriptural precedent for this, but I have personal experience of my dead brother is now an angel, and I have seen him in his angelic form. So I know that there is a potential for us to go beyond the limits of our material life, and that the light is interwoven through our flesh, and through this working with the angelic, we are developing these light bodies, these angelic bodies. And I see the siren as this first meshing of the human with this ability to fly, to transcend death. I have much more to say there, because I wanted to talk about post-humanism and transhumanism and machines, but maybe we can have a discussion about that afterwards in the questions. Let me see how I'm going to close this up. Well, yes, this apocatastasis. It's astrologers out there will recognize this as the return of stars to their original position, or the planetary. This is also what happens to the fallen angels eventually. They return. And there is a sexual metaphor in here too, which you find in Liber 49, for anybody here familiar with that. In I forgot what the line is: "Stand thou fast, and I shall pass the third veil, and the forms of hell shall be turned again to loveliness." This is the apocatastasis of the fallen angels, which is also the reverse, the bringing up of the sexual energy through the spine and up to the top of the crown of the head and beyond. So I don't believe that we can upload our consciousnesses to machines, because machines are not sensible, they are not tactile, they do not have feeling. And I think it is only through feeling that we return, and through this experience, and the intermingling of the angels with us in our bodies is so that we all return and can become the next thing we're meant to become. Thank you.
Oh, marvelous. That's lovely. And thank you for that inspiring and enchanting talk. I'm in love. We have a number of very deep and insightful, beautiful questions. So should we just dive in?
Yeah, do so.
Okay, let's do this from the last question, and we'll work backwards.
Okay.
If that's all right.
I can't see the questions. Are you
No
going to read
worries.
them? Are you
No
going to tell
worries.
me how to
I'll
see
read
them?
them. They're in the chat, but I'll read them to
Oh,
you.
okay. I've brought chat up. Wow. The future is here.
So Skylar had this beautiful question. Thank you so much for sharing. Do you you've a few words for male perspective in regard to this spiritual intimacy? Do you have a few words?
Oh, do I have a few words for the male experience?
And Skylar goes on, I've always felt the topic was washed out in the motif of being bridegroom of Christ, despite gender and the male desire. I mean, such aspiration might naturally be symbolized by feminine receptivity, backlit by the mystery of the incarnation. But what to say of the male eros, penetration and expense in relation to spirits?
I love this question. Thank you. Well, male sexuality is as unknown and as unyet discovered as female sexuality. And I think that there's a huge disservice done to men, especially in our current era of, toxic masculinity and all that, to disregard the male experience in whatever way that takes form sexually. And Peter has explored this a little bit in his work. So I would point Skylar to some of Peter's work, like The Blooded Path to Babylon, where one starts to work with the male body. Peter uses ordeal, and he uses a lot of extreme sports as well for his. This is the way Peter's wired. I'm definitely not wired like that. But it has its own architecture, the male body, and there is a lot of suppression of male desire because it is criticized all the time. So when I said the angelic gaze, I was doing that in reference actually to the idea, which I find quite questionable, or it's used in a very derogatory way, of the male gaze as some kind of aggressive thing, because while a lot of my work is focused around my own sexuality and my own body, I am very aware that men at the moment are in just as difficult situation as women in terms of exploring this, and in an open way. And well, essentially men can also be possessed by spirits. So if you can call the spirits into your body. It's got nothing to do with passivity. It's got everything to do with an energized arousal. Women are not passive in sex. We're not passive in the moment of creation of a new being. We are the woman is discerning, definitely more discerning than men are generally. I think even men would agree with me on that. But this is an evolutionary thing, because we have to look after our safety. We have to be concerned about we think more long term often, because we have to live with consequences in a way that men don't sexually. No, I would be delighted if men would write more and do more work and explore this more, and overturn some of the I find them damning ideas that have been pushed through social media, particularly about male sexuality. And I think it's time we had an honest discussion about that, because I think there are very dangerous because it's such a strong power, and it's a strong power in men and women, and I don't think you can separate it. I think that they're interwoven, and that's even in the case of homosexuality, because we are all bodies and we all desire. And yeah, in terms of angelic working, I wouldn't know what to offer, but it isn't about passivity. It's about desire. It's about arousal. It's about reaching that inflamed state and being honest with that, having that encounter with the other, and being open for that. I hope that makes sense.
It was good for me.
Okay. It's hard for me to talk for a man, but in general, I think that there needs to be a bigger discussion on this.
Agreed. And so, and another question, Alvaro, oh, I'm slaying that one. Regarding the body beyond the body,
Yeah.
they say that's Buto as well, going beyond death. Ishikawa wrote that the movements of Buto were like the ones of the dead after the Hiroshima and Nagasaki bombs. For him, it had to do with the spirits of the ancestors. What's your view on that?
Buto is many things, but it's definitely it can't be understood without understanding what happened at Hiroshima and Nagasaki. I think there is, with the bomb, there is a catastrophic loss of innocence with which we have to reckon, and it belongs as well to those other traumas of mechanized death, which we see in the 20th century, whether that's the death camps, Auschwitz, whether that's Stalin, whether that Mao, Pol Pot, all of these mass destructions of life through the machine. Because of course, like in the ancient world or in tribal cultures, there's death, there's conflict, there's war, and it's not pretty. But there's something very emotionally and just it shakes consciousness to its roots to encounter this mechanized death. So I don't think Buto can be understood apart from that experience. But I think also what happens is that with Buto, there's this connection to the ground. And for Hijikata Tatsumi, he understood the ground, like the beaten earth of the floor of the blacksmith, for example, or this simple space, the most simple ground, just the beaten earth, as the place where gods reside. And there is this sense that through this walking action, or this contact where, I mean, for me, I understand like the work I do, everything is coming from in out and from the deep, the below and up. So the action of walking and the touch of the foot on the ground is where transformation begins, and it happens in contact with the earth. So they are ghosts, but they're ghosts that are allowed to echo and remember themselves through your body. That's how I understand. But Buto is as many things as the people who practice it as well.
Marvelous.
Thank you.
Yeah. Marvelous. So next question that comes up, again, going backwards through the chat, Natasha says, have you ever considered the angelic, erotic / sexual exchange in the spiritual / imaginal realm as one's own divine double, like a feminine's masculine half in the 5th dimension? Because yes, it does feel like sex with an angel or daimon, or an animus exchange with the animus. An animus exchange. Yes.
That's a nice question. It's I don't know if you can ever really know, but when Irigaray puts the angel in the placenta, isn't that your stellar daimon as well? I mean, what angel is there? So it's already there surrounding you in this very first environment. So it's possible, but I don't think it's just that angel. I don't think it's just your stellar daimon, but I do imagine that it could be, because it's closest to you. But I have had apart from like random sex with tree spirits, I've had these erotic encounters with spirits which feel utterly alien. And so I don't know if the stellar daimon would feel so utterly alien. And I think that what I'm really interested in is this this is what I pray for the future, that if we can go to these very limits, to the body beyond the body, if we can reach to the edges of the Kuiper belt, for example, these places on the edge are where something alien comes in from a distant, star system, meeting with something from our own. And I feel like it's that possible with the angel, that the angel could be, like when I had the experience the first time of being touched and I thought it was Peter, I now know that it was Peter's desire and my desire drawing an angel to physically come onto my skin and into my body. And then it could have been just, I don't know what angel that was. It could have been my angel awakening, but I actually think it could be very far, very open. I like not knowing. I don't need to know, but I can tell from the energetic. I had like 10 years between 15 and 25 of rather horrible, at the time I understood them as kind of psychic attacks or spiritual attacks with entities which were not friendly and which, at least they didn't want to rape me, but they were very, very hostile and inimical to my life. And that was a very, 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 very different feeling. And that felt alien in a sense, you would say. It does not want to teach you, it just wants to make you frightened, and it's feeding off your fear at the very least. With the angel, there is a sense of exchange and it transforms your body. And I believe that it also is transformed through this encounter. It has knowledge of the body. So it's almost the feeling as if it awakens inside you and your own sense of your body is transformed. Absolutely, like you feel different. The space inside you is vast. The movement of energies through you become like landscapes that are actually in the process of forming, as though you're in a highly volatile state. And this is the sensation you get. And I don't think my stellar daimon would do that, but I'm interested in attracting these forces that can bring about these really, like, this deep rupture of a kind of a newness out of what's already in my matter, in my body.
Thank you. I love that. I mean,
so yes and no.
Yeah. And then next question, do you think with the angels and other spirits that it is an impulse for sex from their side, or something that we experience a heightened level of intimacy with an other as sex? And then they go on to say, perhaps it doesn't really matter, but.
Well, what is sex? There's an exchange of information. When a being, when a new creature, when a life is created, meiosis happens, and there's this chiasmic structure that divides the material from the different pieces of DNA, and they separate between one side and the other side, and a choice is made. And there's some element of chance to it, some element of this is the material, this is the destiny, this is what you have to work with. But there's also chance how that plays out when you throw the die, when meiosis happens. I think it's something similar with the angel. I think the experience of joining, uniting, having communion with an intelligence like this is similarly an exchange of knowledge, where part of what I give them, they return with, and part of what they give me is then incorporated into my being. And when I say being or body mind, it's like in this broad sense that I've been, they come into your environment, but your environment is also mutually implicated in your body, and they become part of your ecology that you exist in and interact with continually.
So you're talking about not just a body experience, but a spiritual.
No, an extended. It extends
Oh.
beyond. Yeah, yeah.
Yes, lovely. And then I believe the last one that I have here is someone was asking about a copy of the Oath that you were reading way early on, the Isis, the prophetess.
Yeah.
And Skylar jumped in and gave a link. So I think we may have answered that.
I can.
If you, do you have?
I don't have it on the computer in front of me because I'll post it on Instagram.
Lovely.
Okay.
Okay. So, okay. And
Okay.
that's all we had as far as the questions go. I want to thank you, and you can go on. You have more time.
Sure. I'm just seeing questions coming up, and I can't write. I'm paralyzed with.
Yes, you're right. Okay. So thank you.
I don't know what to suggest. There's like things, maybe people can write to me. They could message me on Instagram. We could have a conversation or something. And I put a post up this morning with a picture of a siren. And if they wanted to leave a comment underneath, I can try to answer it. And maybe that's probably the way to go. And
what is your Instagram? And I will put that in the chat.
My handle. Oh, I've got a typey thing. Hey, wait a moment. I don't even know what my Instagram is. I think it's alkistis.dimech with an @ in front of it to everyone. Sorry for the kind of short, unfriendly. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for being here and listening, and the ideas and the comments and the questions. Thank you.
Do you want to continue on? Should we?
Oh, yeah, sure. I can keep going.
We have a few more minutes. If you're game, we're game. Lovely. Another question. I see that other more alien exchange you were referring to as incubus or succubus. But my other question is, does your work link Eve and the fall myth and original sin and her liaison with the devil/demon/diamond to the daughters of men mating with the fallen angels who taught the secrets of sin, occult mysteries, and magic skill? It seems obvious, but wondering your take, or perhaps Lilith instead of Eve.
Probably a good idea to read the chapter that Peter wrote on it in Lucifer Princeps, because he wrote quite a comprehensive treatment of Eve as the serpent and the wife God used to have before the priests decided that she wasn't necessary. So in that sense, it does link thematically with the daughters and with this transmission of knowledge and in a carnal sense. So yes, there's definitely a thematic link, even though these are different origin stories for the creation or the creation, the origin of evil in the world, or the origin of death through the body of the woman. But they're thematically linked, even though they're coming from different mythic lines. But the effect is kind of the same anyway. It's that the feminine divine has been demonized, and it's been, and along with that, everything has gone out of balance, I guess.
Yes, thank you. What a lovely ethereal and embodied talk. I'm in love with you now. So.
Thank you. I'm glad you enjoyed the talk. I was so anxious about this one. I thought I was the non-astro I guess pirate coming in to talk about bodies.
Lovely, perfect, wonderful. We need it, so needed. So we are not just our heads.
I'm really interested to get feedback in terms the piece when I was talking about Isis the prophetess and how she works with a particular place and astrological timing and so on from the year all the way down into the hour. I'm very interested to hear more feedback about this kind of ideas from astrologers in terms of working with the body and creating more just more conversations and information about the links between like the embodied experience and the astrological knowledge that you guys have. And I have only like enough to get me by basically in the way I work, but not the sort of the granularity that astrologers have. So it would be very interesting to see what might come out of that.
Marvelous. Oh, thank you. And lots of comments in the chat. People have loved this so much.
Oh, great.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, everybody.
And I'm going to stop the recording.
Okay.